Order in the court. Supreme Justice Vorex pounded his gavel tentacle against the resonating plate, sending vibrations through the grand hall of cosmic justice. The case of the United Galactic Federation versus the species known as humans will now commence. I shuffled uncomfortably in my observer's seat, my 6 appendages twitching with anticipation. As the leading xenoanthropologist from Nexus Prime, I had studied the primitive bipeds from Sol 3 for decades. Yet nothing prepared me for seeing them in person. There were 5 of them standing in the accused box, looking remarkably unimpressed. How strange. Most species quivered in terror when brought before the Galactic Court. These humans just looked bored, almost amused. "My name is Supreme Justice Vorex of the Tarsian Collective," the justice announced, his voice translator booming across the chamber. "I will preside over these proceedings with my fellow justices, High Counselor Ziv of the Proxima Nebula, Grand Arbiter Clix of the Orion Alliance, and Quantum Judge Plex of the Andromeda Frontier." The humans whispered among themselves, occasionally snickering. Didn't they understand the gravity of their situation? War crimes against a superior coalition carried the penalty of planetary quarantine for millennia. One human, the tallest of the group with fur on his face, leaned toward another and said something that made the others burst into laughter. Supreme Justice Vorex slammed his gavel tentacle again. "Silence. You stand accused of 57 violations of the Galactic Code, including unsanctioned resistance against a Class 9 civilization, unauthorized technological advancement, biological warfare, and the destruction of 3 Harvester-class vessels. How do you plead?" The tallest human stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Name's Captain Jack Harlow of Earth's Combined Defense Fleet. And I gotta say, your translator's doing a bang-up job, because I understood every word of that nonsense." Gasps echoed through the court chamber. Even I felt my breathing sacs constrict. No one spoke to a Supreme Justice like that. "You will address this court with respect." Justice Vorex's skin changed from pale blue to furious purple. Captain Harlow shrugged. "Look, we're happy to be respectful, but respect goes both ways. You invaded our system without warning, tried to strip mine our moon, and when we politely asked you to leave, you started blasting. So pardon us if we're not exactly trembling in our boots." One of the other humans, a female with short, dark head fur, snorted. Politely asked. "That's one way of putting it." "Commander Lin," Harlow said with a grin, "maybe let's not remind them about the exact wording of that transmission." "I've got it memorized," said another human, shorter and stockier than the others. Admiral Joshi's exact words were, "Get your tentacled, probe happy behinds out of our solar system before we turn your fancy ships into space confetti." Classic. Justice Vorex looked like he might explode. "This is outrageous. You are a pre-FTL civilization. According to galactic law, your planet and resources are available for harvesting by any Class 9 or higher civilization." The 4th human stepped forward, adjusting some kind of seeing device on his face. "Dr. Felix Garcia, Earth Diplomatic Corps. I'd like to point out that nowhere in your so-called galactic law does it stipulate that a pre-FTL civilization cannot defend itself." We checked. Thoroughly. The 5th human, tall with dark skin and silver in his hair, nodded. "Furthermore, General Omar Parker, Earth Combined Forces. Your law defines a pre-FTL civilization as one incapable of light-speed travel. While our public transportation systems don't utilize FTL technology yet, our defensive capabilities most certainly do. You just didn't bother to check before assuming we were easy pickings." The court erupted in chaos. I frantically scribbled notes on my datapad. This was unprecedented. In my 300 cycles of studying developing civilizations, I had never witnessed such audacity. Supreme Justice Vorex raised all 4 of his upper appendages. Silence. Prosecutor Traz, present your evidence. A tall, spindly being with translucent skin glided forward. "Honorable Justices, the evidence against the humans is overwhelming. Exhibit A, the destruction of 3 harvester vessels, resulting in the loss of 4,219 Zorlian workers. Captain Harlow interrupted. Those harvester vessels were cutting chunks out of our moon. The moon. You know, the big round thing that controls our tides? Kind of important to our ecosystem? Prosecutor Traz continued, as if he hadn't heard. Exhibit B, the use of prohibited quantum disruptors against Xorlian forces. Dr. Garcia chuckled. We don't have quantum disruptors. Those were modified satellite defense systems. Completely legal under your own code, Section 42B, Indigenous Defensive Measures. Exhibit C, Traz persisted, his voice rising. Biological warfare through the release of harmful microorganisms into Xorlian breathing systems. At this, all 5 humans burst into unrestrained laughter. Commander Lin wiped tears from her eyes. You mean when we sneezed? Are you serious right now? I couldn't help but feel a twinge of amusement myself. The mighty Xorlians, undone by human nasal emissions. It was almost too absurd to believe. The prosecutor slammed his evidence pad down. The humans deliberately contaminated our environment suits with their biological material. Admiral Parker from Earth's Combined Forces cleared his throat. Your environment suits had gaps. Not our fault your billion-year-old civilization doesn't understand the concept of airtight seals. And biological material? It was a common cold. Our kindergartners handle it better than your troops did. Justice Vorex's skin was now cycling through colors faster than a quantum fluctuation. The evidence clearly shows that humanity responded with disproportionate force. Captain Harlow stepped forward again. Your ships fired first. We have the recordings. Would you like us to play them for the court? Including the part where your commander threatened to, and I quote, reduce your pathetic water world to cosmic dust. The Grand Arbiter Clix leaned forward, compound eyes blinking rapidly. Is this true, prosecutor? Traz hesitated. The recordings must be fabricated. Humans don't possess the technology to. Actually, Dr. Garcia interrupted, pulling out a small device. We do. And we're happy to present this evidence to the court. What followed was 40 minutes of damning recordings that showed, without question, that the Xorlian fleet had indeed initiated hostilities after humanity refused to allow the harvesting of their moon. I watched the justice's expressions change from condemnation to confusion, and finally to consternation. This was not proceeding as planned. Even if the Xorlians fired first, Justice Vorex said, desperately trying to regain control, your response was technological warfare beyond your civilization's registered capabilities. Explain how a pre-FTL species suddenly deployed gravitational inverters and plasma cannons. General Parker smiled thinly. We're quick learners. Commander Lin nodded. And we've been preparing for first contact for centuries. Just because we chose to focus on solving our own problems before gallivanting around the galaxy doesn't mean we weren't ready for you. Dr. Garcia adjusted his glasses again. Also, your intelligence on Earth is woefully outdated. Those civilizational assessments you're using? They're from monitoring our entertainment broadcasts. You literally based your invasion plans on our television shows. The court fell silent. I could barely contain my excitement. This changed everything about my understanding of developmental patterns in sentient species. Captain Harlow crossed his arms. Let me break it down for you. We humans have a long history of fighting each other. Sad but true. So when we finally got our act together and realized we weren't alone in the universe, we didn't dismantle our defenses. We upgraded them, secretly. Because unlike some species I could mention, we don't broadcast our military capabilities for anyone with a basic receiver to pick up. Justice Vorex conferred quietly with the other justices before addressing the humans again. The court needs time to review this new evidence. We will recess for 3 standard cycles and reconvene to deliver our judgment. As the justices filed out, Captain Harlow called after them. Take all the time you need. We've got nowhere to be, except defending our planet from your buddies if they try anything else. The court chamber began to empty, but I couldn't tear myself away. I approached the humans, my scientific curiosity overriding protocol. Excuse me, I burbled through my translator. I am Professor Zilks of Nexus Prime. I have studied your species for many cycles. May I ask you some questions? The humans exchanged glances, then Captain Harlow shrugged. Sure, why not? We're stuck here anyway. I vibrated with excitement. Your defensive capabilities, they far exceed what any models predicted for your developmental stage. How did you advance so quickly without detection? Dr. Garcia smiled. Simple. We compartmentalized. No single person or nation knew everything. We worked in parallel, using different approaches. Some of our greatest breakthroughs came from private companies competing with each other, not government programs. And, Commander Lin added, we're paranoid as hell. Always have been. Show us an alien movie from the last century that doesn't involve invasion. What happens now? I asked. No species has ever challenged the court this way. General Parker's expression turned serious. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Either they recognize our right to exist and defend ourselves, or, I prompted. Captain Harlow's eyes met mine directly, sending an involuntary shiver through my nerve clusters. Or they try again, with a bigger fleet, and find out that what happened to those 3 ships was us being nice. Later that cycle, in my private quarters, I reviewed my notes and added a new hypothesis to my research. But perhaps technological development wasn't the true measure of a civilization's advancement. Perhaps it was something else entirely, something the humans had in abundance. Adaptability, resourcefulness, and a stubborn refusal to be bullied, even by beings who considered themselves gods among the stars. The Galactic Court had charged humans with war crimes, and the humans had laughed. As I prepared for the next day's proceedings, I couldn't help but wonder if soon the rest of the galaxy might be laughing too, not at the humans, but with them. Or worse, not laughing at all. The 3 standard cycles in the Galactic Court felt like an eternity. I used this time to observe the humans in their temporary holding quarters, which they had somehow transformed into what they called a war room. They were allowed basic amenities, but no communications devices. Not that it seemed to matter. Professor Zilks, Captain Harlow greeted me as the guard drone allowed me entry. Come to study the primitive humans some more. The sarcasm in his voice was unmistakable, but not unkind. The 5 of them had pushed together the strange gel beds provided by the court and covered them with hand-drawn star charts and diagrams. I come seeking knowledge, I admitted, all 6 of my appendages fidgeting nervously. Your species fascinates me. Commander Lin looked up from what appeared to be a makeshift map of the court building sketched on some kind of fabric. You're the first alien we've met who seems more interested in understanding us than conquering us. That's something, I guess. Dr. Garcia offered me a seat on one of their curious folding chairs. What would you like to know, Professor? You face almost certain defeat. I burbled through my translator. The United Galactic Federation has never reversed a judgment against a lesser species. Yet you continue to what is the term? Plan? As if you have options beyond acceptance. General Parker laughed, a sharp, barking sound that startled me. Lesser species. That's rich. Tell me, Professor, how many planets has your Federation actually conquered through direct military action? Not legal trickery or technological intimidation, but actual warfare. The question caught me off guard. I do not have exact statistics. I'll tell you, Admiral Joshi said, looking up from his diagrams. 0. They've never fought a war they couldn't win through superior technology and legal manipulation. They've never faced an adversary that wouldn't back down. What makes you so confident? I asked, genuinely curious. Captain Harlow sat down across from me, his eyes reflecting the strange blue lighting of the chamber. Because they made a fundamental mistake when they attacked Earth. They assumed technological superiority equals victory. But human history tells a different story. Dr. Garcia nodded. Throughout our history, technologically advanced forces have been defeated by supposedly primitive opponents countless times. Not because the primitive side had better weapons, but because they had something else. And what is that? I asked, recording every word. Will, Commander Lin said simply. The absolute refusal to surrender, no matter the odds, plus a healthy dose of what we call spite. Spite? My translator struggled with the concept. The determination to make victory so costly that it's not worth pursuing, General Parker explained. We call it asymmetric warfare. If you can't match your enemy's strength, you target their weaknesses instead. I contemplated this strange concept as Captain Harlow continued. The Azorlians thought they were launching a simple resource acquisition mission. Instead, they stumbled into a hornet's nest. Do you know what hornets are, Professor? I do not. Small flying insects with painful stings. Individually, not very threatening. But disturb their nest, and thousands will attack relentlessly. They'll die by the hundreds just to drive you away. Admiral Joshi grinned. That's humans in a nutshell. Mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. Before I could respond, the door membrane dilated, and a court official entered. The justices will reconvene in 1/4 cycle. The accused will prepare themselves. As the official left, the humans exchanged glances. Showtime, Captain Harlow said, straightening his uniform. Remember, Commander Lin added, no matter what they decide, stick to the plan. Plan. What plan could these 5 isolated humans possibly have? I followed them back to the courtroom, my curiosity overriding my better judgment. The Grand Hall of Cosmic Justice seemed more crowded than before. Representatives from dozens of species filled the observation galleries. Word had spread about the unusual proceedings. All rise for the honorable justices, the court announcer droned. Supreme Justice Vorex and his fellow justices glided in, their ceremonial robes billowing dramatically. I noticed they had added extra security drones around the perimeter. Interesting. To be seated, Vorex commanded. After reviewing the evidence presented, this court has reached its verdict regarding the species known as humans and their actions against the Azorlian expansion fleet. The chamber fell silent. Even the humans stood motionless, though I noticed Captain Harlow's hand resting near a strange device on his wrist that hadn't been there before. The charges of unsanctioned resistance and unauthorized technological advancement are dismissed, Vorex announced, causing murmurs throughout the gallery. Evidence clearly shows the Azorlians initiated hostilities after humanity rejected their resource acquisition proposal. Commander Lin nudged Captain Harlow, who nodded almost imperceptibly. However, Vorex continued, his voice hardening, the charges of biological warfare and disproportionate response remain. The destruction of 3 Harvester-class vessels using technology beyond your registered capabilities represents a violation of Galactic Code 335B, exception regarding civilizational advancement status. Dr. Garcia stepped forward. Your Honor, we never claimed to be less advanced than we are. Your Federation made assumptions based on incomplete intelligence. Silence. Vorex thundered. The court's decision is final. Humanity is hereby sentenced to civilizational probation. All defensive systems exceeding Class 3 capabilities must be dismantled under Federation supervision. A monitoring station will be established in your solar system to ensure compliance. Failure to adhere to. These terms will result in immediate planetary quarantine. The humans didn't react with the outrage or despair I expected. Instead, Captain Harlow simply checked his wrist device and smiled. With all due respect, Your Honor, he said calmly, we reject your verdict. The court erupted in shocked exclamations. Justice Vorex's skin shifted to a deep crimson. You cannot reject a Galactic Court verdict. Security, restrain the humans. As the security drones moved forward, Captain Harlow raised his hand. Before your drones get any closer, you might want to check on your fleet. Grand Arbiter Clix leaned forward. What nonsense is this? Dr. Garcia adjusted his glasses. It's not nonsense. While we've been entertaining you here, Earth has been preparing. You see, we sent 5 representatives to your court. But Earth has a population of over 8 billion. And they've been busy. Admiral Joshi grinned. Very busy. A court aide rushed in, whispering urgently to Justice Vorex, whose skin suddenly paled to an ashen gray. Impossible, he whispered. What is it? Quantum Judge Plex demanded. The Federation Enforcement Fleet, Vorex said shakily. All 27 vessels disabled. Captain Harlow's smile widened. Not destroyed, just temporarily inconvenienced. We could have vaporized them, but that would have been disproportionate, wouldn't it? How? Vorex demanded. You've been in custody. You had no communications devices. Commander Lin laughed. You really should research a species before you kidnap their representatives. Humans have been imagining alien abduction scenarios for centuries. We came prepared. General Parker stepped forward. The moment your ships entered our system without permission, we activated our defense protocols. When you seized us, countdown timers started. We tried to be reasonable, Dr. Garcia added. We participated in your trial, presented evidence, followed your procedures. And you still intended to punish us for defending ourselves. So now, Captain Harlow said, all humor gone from his voice, we're going to propose some terms of our own. The justices conferred frantically among themselves. The gallery was in an uproar. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. In all recorded history, no species had ever held the Galactic Court hostage. This is unprecedented. Justice Vorex finally spluttered. You cannot dictate terms to this court. Admiral Joshi shrugged. Actually, we can. Right now, your entire enforcement fleet is experiencing what we call a system reset. No life support systems were harmed, but their weapons, propulsion, and communications will remain offline until we say otherwise. Captain Harlow activated his wrist device, projecting a holographic document into the air. These are our terms, simple, reasonable, and non-negotiable. Dr. Garcia began reading. 1. Earth and the Sol system are recognized as sovereign territory, off limits to all harvesting, mining, or colonization without explicit permission from humanity's unified government. Commander Lin continued. 2. Humanity is to be reclassified as a Class 9 civilization, with all rights and protections thereof, but including full voting rights in the Galactic Council. General Parker added. 3. The Exorlian Expansion Corporation will pay reparations for damage to Luna, that's our moon, in the form of technical knowledge and raw materials, to be determined by a joint commission. And finally, Captain Harlow concluded. 4. Any further aggression against Earth or human colonies will be considered an act of war against a Class 9 civilization, with all applicable consequences. Silence fell over the court. I could barely breathe. This was revolutionary. A pre-FTL species, or at least what had been thought of as pre-FTL, dictating terms to the United Galactic Federation. Justice Vorex's voice quivered with rage. And if we refuse? Captain Harlow's smile turned predatory. Then we'll be forced to demonstrate why attacking Earth was the worst mistake the Federation has ever made. The technology we used against your fleet? That's decades old. Want to see what we developed last year? You're bluffing, Quantum Judge Plex said, but uncertainty tinged his voice. Admiral Joshi tapped his own wrist device, and suddenly every screen in the court displayed the same image, 27 Federation warships floating dead in space, surrounded by much smaller Earth vessels. Does this look like a bluff? Commander Lin asked quietly. The justices huddled together, their voices too low for anyone to hear. Finally, Justice Vorex turned back to face the humans. The court will consider your proposal, he said through gritted teeth. Excellent, Captain Harlow replied. And to show our good faith, we'll reactivate life support redundancies on your fleet. The rest stays offline until we have an agreement. As the court adjourned once more, the gallery exploded with activity. Representatives from dozens of civilizations swarmed toward the humans, suddenly eager to establish diplomatic relations with this surprising new power. I pushed through the crowd, desperate to speak with them again before they were surrounded completely. Captain Harlow, I called out. A moment, please. He turned, recognizing me, and gestured for the others to proceed without him. "Professor Zilks," he said warmly, "what can I do for you?" "How did you do it?" I asked breathlessly. "The communication, the fleet, all of it." He tapped his wrist device, quantum entanglement communicator. Undetectable, because it doesn't transmit signals in any conventional sense. As for the fleet, let's just say we've been working on non-destructive EMP technology for some time. Perfect for situations where you need to make a point without causing casualties. But the risk. What if the court had simply ordered your execution? Captain Harlow's expression turned serious. That was a possibility. But we calculated that the Federation values procedure and appearances too much for that. You don't build a galactic legal system just to toss it aside at the first challenge. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now." He smiled again. "Now humanity joins the galactic community. On our terms, not yours. We'll share our technology, our art, our culture. We'll trade and explore and learn. But we'll never, ever surrender our right to defend ourselves." "And the Zorlians?" "We have no interest in revenge. They attacked us, we defended ourselves, and now we move forward. That's the human way. Well, the best of the human way, at least." As Captain Harlow moved to join his colleagues, I called after him. "One last question. The court charged you with war crimes." You laughed. "Why?" He paused, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. "Because, Professor Zilks, the greatest war crime is starting a war you can't finish against an enemy you don't understand, for resources you don't need." We laughed because the alternative was to get angry. And trust me, you wouldn't like us when we're angry. 3 cycles later, the United Galactic Federation ratified the Sol System Sovereignty Treaty. Humanity was officially recognized as a Class 9 civilization. The Zorlian Expansion Corporation was fined and restricted from operations in 7 sectors. And Earth established its first embassy on the Federation capital world. I returned to Nexus Prime with more data than any xenoanthropologist had ever collected on a newly contacted species. My research paper, Laughter in the Face of Adversity, Humanity's Unconventional Path to Galactic Recognition, became the most cited work in my field. But I never forgot Captain Harlow's parting words to me, delivered as he boarded the ship that would take the humans back to Earth. "The galaxy charged us with crimes for defending our home. We laughed not because we found it funny, but because sometimes laughter is the only reasonable response to absurdity. Remember that, Professor, and tell your people. Earth welcomes friends with open arms. But those who come as enemies, they'll wish they'd never heard of humans." As I watch humanity spread throughout the stars and the cycles since that remarkable court case, establishing colonies, forging alliances, and sharing their unique blend of technology and culture, I often reflect on how differently things might have gone. The Galactic Court charged humans with war crimes. The humans laughed. And now, the entire galaxy is learning to laugh with them. Though sometimes, in the dark between the stars, I wonder what will happen when humanity stops laughing. The end.